Good morning to everyone that has joined us today. Can I just please get some thumbs up to confirm if everyone can hear me clearly? Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming. Good morning again, colleagues, and welcome to another workshop with the Research Capacity Development Unit at the University of Johannesburg Postgraduate School. Today's workshop is titled VIVA Doctoral Degree Defense, General Guidelines and Policies. My name is Kokezo, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I would firstly like to notify you that this workshop is being recorded, and I have already clicked on the recording button. And I will also start off by thanking all the attendees for taking the time to join us today on this session. And most importantly, I would like to thank our presenter, Prof. Priveshni Pillay, for her efforts with preparing and giving this presentation. Before I can introduce Prof. Pillay to you, please just allow me to remind you of some of the housekeeping rules and important information that we need to take note of. So for the housekeeping rules, if you do have questions during the presentation, please raise your hand if you would like to speak. Alternatively, you can type the question on the chat box. I will then indicate to Prof. Pillay to address your question. And also, as I've already mentioned, that this session is being recorded and the presentation slides will be requested from the presenter, and both the recording and the slides will be uploaded on our module communities before the end of the week. And also a feedback survey will be sent out on the chat box during the session. Please, can we request that you take a few minutes to complete the feedback survey and just to let us know how you found the workshop, and also to provide some of the kind words to our facilitators. And also this will be used for our reporting facilitators and RCD reporting. And also on the feedback survey, you can just take the opportunity to suggest some of the topics that you would want us to cover, and we will arrange workshops based on those topics. And just to also notify everyone that as of the beginning of October, we will be fully migrating to the Research Capacity Development Unit Management System, otherwise known as the RCDMS system. And so we will be migrating fully. It means that is the only platform that we're going to be using. So just to urge everyone who have not yet registered on our system to please do so. If you do need assistance with registration, please don't hesitate to contact us on rcdinquiries@uj.ac.za, and then we will take you through the registration process, so that you you keep updated on our activities at the Research Capacity Development Unit. So I will then proceed to introduce our presenter, Prof. Pillay, by reading out her bio. So Professor Pillay joined the Technikon Witwatersrand as a lecturer in chemistry on the 1st of July 2021, and is now 24 years in service at the University of Johannesburg. She is currently a full professor of Analytical and Environmental Chemistry in the Department of Chemical Sciences, University of Johannesburg. Her research interests are in developing nanomaterials for water treatment and forensic applications. She has to date hosted 7 postdoctoral research fellows and graduated 21 MSc students and 13 PhD students. She has published 94 journal articles in international accredited journals, 7 book chapters, 2 conference papers, and filed one patent. She has presented papers at 13 international conferences and has a Scopus H index of 38, Google Scholar H index of 40, and 4,051 citations. Prof. Pillay served the Department of Chemical Sciences as Deputy Head of Department, Teaching and Learning for 3 years, and also represented this department on the Faculty Teaching and Learning Committee, Faculty Higher Degrees Committee. She currently serves as a Senate representative on the Senate Executive Committee at the University of Johannesburg. She has additionally served as a reviewer for several international accredited journals, as well as served on review panels for the National Research Foundation and Water Research Commission. So without further ado, I will then hand over to Prof. Pillay to take us through this workshop. Over to you, Prof. Pillay.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to quickly share my screen so that everyone can see my slides.
Thank you. Just to confirm with you also, Prof. Pillay, while you're still uploading your slides,
Okay, sure.
would you like to take questions at the during the session, or would you rather just reserve the questions at the end of the session?
I'd prefer to do it at the end of the session because I have made provision for open discussion, and my presentation is not really that long as well.
Okay, thank you. As you have heard, participants, we can just reserve the questions for the question and answer segment at the end of Prof. Pillay's presentation. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I think it stopped sharing my screen. Let me just share it again. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen now. Can
We
everyone
can
see it?
see this. We
Yeah,
can see
okay,
the
sure.
presentation, but it's not
Okay.
on presenter mode as yet.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on presenter mode.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. You've heard about who I am and where I'm coming from. So basically, what I'm going to do today is guide you from my own experience in terms of the VIVA oral defense process and what are some of the guidelines and policies that we follow in implementing this. Now, in order for you to have a better picture of what's really going on, we're going to start off by talking about what is the VIVA vocay, what is it meant to serve, the rationale behind it, some of the benefits and opportunities, and also the outcomes and the influence it can have on the final results. And I'm going to conclude with some guidelines for supervisors in an audience on how to prepare a student for this, and also to the students on how they should prepare for this. And then we're going to spend some time having some open discussion on this matter where you can feel free to ask any questions that you want to on this topic. So basically, as you all are aware, the VIVA vocay is an oral defense of a PhD thesis in which the PhD candidate is given an opportunity to engage with the examiners verbally, and it basically provides the student with an opportunity to interact with the examiners and to explain why they've actually undertaken that particular study. Because as all of us know, the PhD is all about an original contribution. And from my own experience, I can tell you a lot of examiners place an emphasis on this during the oral defense process, where one of the first questions they tend to ask the candidate is, what is your original contribution? How would you defend it, right? Now, this normally takes place as per policy guidelines within 2 weeks after all the examiner's reports are in. So typically for a PhD, three external examiners are appointed, and once the faculty officer receives all three examiners' reports, this is shared with the supervisor who communicates this to the students. While the student is busy doing the corrections, then they start preparing for the VIVA, which takes place within 2 weeks. And what we do in our department is we have an administrator who contacts all the examiners and schedules a date within 2 weeks. Now, this is not hard and fast because sometimes it also depends on the availability of examiners. And typically, as per UJ policies and guidelines, this takes place after the examiner's reports are in, because the comments that the examiners make after examining the written thesis sort of guides the supervisor and the student as to what are the important points that need to be highlighted in the presentation. So it provides the student with an opportunity to showcase and also to celebrate the highlights of their work. And that's really the angle from which we need to approach the preparation for the Viva. It's an opportunity for the student to talk about what he or she has done in the past 3 years and to show the highlights and the valuable contribution it's made. So I'm just going to highlight that the oral defense wasn't always something that we implemented at UJ, but there was what we call a CHE audit that took place some um, years back. And in that audit, it was recommended that we now go the route of following the um, oral defense as a final hurdle to the student attaining the degree, right? So basically, according to CHE guidelines, the candidate has to show some evidence of independence and competency in the related field of study. The candidate also has to show an in-depth understanding of the research. So it's not just a matter of presenting the results, but showing that he or she understands the theoretical concepts behind everything. And I can tell you from my own experience with this that examiners do sometimes question students on the very basics, the basic theoretical principles that they should have understood when undertaking these projects. And then basically the candidate has to demonstrate evidence that he or she has attained a broad knowledge of the field of research. Now, also the Viva is meant to show the candidates independent ownership of the work, that the candidate himself or the candidate herself has written the thesis and no one else has written the thesis for that candidate. That is a very important criteria. And then it also gives the candidates opportunities to engage with other specialists in the field. Over the 3 year study, the candidate only has an opportunity to engage with the supervisor or co-supervisor or maybe other collaborators in the field. But now it's meant to enable the candidates to speak to other specialists. And if the candidate is willing to continue with research, it opens up some opportunities for them, which I'll talk about later. So, and also it's a process that's meant to address that the candidate has met all the requirements according to the national qualification framework, and therefore that candidate is worthy of a PhD. So these are the basic objectives behind the VIVA process, and they have all been guided by the CHE, the Council for Higher Education. So just to give you an idea of the guidelines for the format or the standard operating procedure, now this may vary amongst different institutions. It may even vary amongst different faculties. But basically at UJ, it was the Faculty of Humanities who first started this whole process of the PhD oral defense. And the rest of the faculties who took a decision to come on board after we received that feedback from CHE sort of followed more or less what the Faculty of Humanities was doing. So basically a non-assessing chair has to be appointed to chair the whole session and to make sure that the correct procedure and format is followed. And that non-assessing chair can be the head of department, or can be a deputy or any senior colleague in the department. Now what we are currently doing in our faculty is when we complete our nomination of assessor form, we have to indicate, yes, the non-assessing chair has been appointed, and we have to indicate who the non-assessing chair is. So that sort of puts everything into place. But initially, when we first came on board, we were still finding our feet a bit. And so it wasn't hard and fast in the beginning. But now our faculty has streamlined things such that when you're nominating the assessors, you simultaneously, as the supervisor, indicate who's going to be the non-assessing chair. The oral defense itself can take place either virtually or in person. It all depends on the availability of examiners, right? Generally, for a PhD, at least one of the three examiners has to be an international examiner, right? So if that examiner is unable to attend in person, it's better to schedule the Viva virtually. It can have its advantages and disadvantages depending on the situation and network coverage and so on. So one has to be aware of this. So basically what we have in our department is an administrator and a technical expert who oversees everything and makes sure that everything is set up so that we can avoid that problem, right? Then the candidate is given between 60 to 90 minutes to present the thesis to the examiners, right? And now what I've noticed is this sometimes varies amongst faculties. It also even varies within departments and faculties. So basically what our faculty does is they leave it up to us to schedule the Viva and to provide the guidelines and whatever to the students and the supervisors. But all we have to do for faculty to have a record that the Viva has taken place is to issue a letter stating that the Viva took place on this date and the examiners that were present concur that the candidate should be awarded. And that's when faculty approves the results. So right now at UJ, the Viva is being presented in a format whereby faculty is not directly involved. All that faculty does is facilitates the process by informing the supervisor that the examiner's reports are ready. There is the outcome. You can share it with the student. And then it's the supervisor's responsibility to work together with the administrator of the department to schedule the Viva within 2 weeks. And the administrator or the non-assessing chair then checks on the availability of the examiners and schedules it accordingly, right? Now, a very important aspect of the Viva is that the candidate who's presenting is not allowed to communicate with anyone inside or outside the room. He or she is just there to present it. When it's time for the examiners to engage, they will engage. When it's time for the audience to ask questions, they will ask questions. But the candidate's not allowed to have communication with anyone and is also not to be assisted by the supervisor during the presentation. Right? So the student then presents the Viva, and then the non-assessing chair, who is overseeing everything, will give the examiners first the opportunity to ask the student and engage the students in some discussion with the student. Thereafter, the audience is given an opportunity to ask questions, and the audience can just be other members of staff or students from the department, right? And then the candidate is asked to leave the room, and then the supervisors remain behind to answer any questions or queries or provide any clarity to the examiners. So this is the challenging part of it. It's also almost as though the supervisors are under examination as well. And then after the oral defense has taken place and the examiners have engaged both with the candidate and the supervisor, and then the non-assessing chair engages in a discussion with the examiners to ask them what is the outcome. Do they still want to stand by the decision that they took when the original written document was examined, or do they wish to change? So it's an opportunity for the non-assessing chair to engage. So at this stage, there is no supervisors, no student, no audience available. And then once the examiners have reached consensus, the non-assessing chair then takes a record or a note of anything and writes a letter to the examiners in which they sign confirming that a consensus has been reached on the outcome. And that letter is what is submitted to faculty together with the summary report and the list of corrections that have been done by the student, right? So that concludes the whole process. Now, for supervisors, I want you to understand that this is how the students are seeing the VIVA. They are intimidated by the VIVA. They see this as this horrible monster that they've now not only got to go through 3 years of doing research, getting results, writing it up, submitting and publishing papers. On top of it, they've still got to stand before the audience and present it. And to some students, this can be a very daunting experience. So our role as supervisors is to take that image out of their mind and to make them understand that this is not as bad as they think it is. And if we approach it in the correct manner, it can actually go well. So we need to make students understand the rationale behind this whole thing, that it's not to put you on the spot and to set out to fail you. It's there for you to engage. Sometimes an examiner may read your thesis and not quite understand what you were trying to do, but you are now engaging in an oral, face-to-face, or in a virtual discussion with your examiner in which you can clarify and justify what you actually did. So it provides opportunities for reflecting on the work. What were the positives? What were the negatives? And so on. It also provides opportunities for networking with the examiners. Sometimes both student and supervisor may not have thought of something during the research, but the examiner brings it to their attention, and that's something we can look at going forward. So there's great opportunities for networking, growth, and future research. But something that we need to be aware of is examiners can change the assessment outcome after the oral defense. So we need to guard against that and not give them reasons to do so. Now, this is not meant to scare or intimidate the student in any way, but I think it's the responsibility of the supervisor to ensure that the student is adequately prepared. So it doesn't come to that stage where an examiner has passed a thesis, but then after a viva, can change his mind and say, no, this candidate can't get the PhD. I've never encountered that situation so far, because if you prepare the student adequately, that shouldn't really happen, right? And the other thing is the change in assessment outcome can sometimes be positive as well. You may find that some examiners may read the thesis and not quite get what the student was actually trying to do or achieve. But then after that oral engagement, he or she realized, oh no, the student actually does know what he or she, and so they can change their mind. And I did have a case where before the oral defense, an examiner wanted a resubmission for the student. But after the oral engagement with the student, when he realized the student actually knew what he was doing, he changed his mind and said, no, the student doesn't have to resubmit the thesis. He's happy to let it pass. So there are both positives and negatives in this, and we need to bear that in mind when preparing the students. And then I just want to remind everybody, although we all do know this, is for a PhD, we often appoint 3 assessors, and one has to be an international assessor. Now, there's 3 categories of results. The one is accept as is. The other one is minor corrections. The second is major corrections, in which case the examiner does have a right to re-examine the thesis. And well, the category I did not include there is the total rejection of the thesis. This is very rare, but it can happen. Some examiners do choose to reject. In that case, the viva does not take place. And what usually happens, I know I had a case where 2 examiners passed the student with minor corrections, and a third rejected it after resubmission. In that particular case, we appointed a fourth examiner who also passed it with minor corrections, and then the Viva was scheduled thereafter. And we really need to bear in mind that the Viva can change the way in which examiners perceive the student's work. So it's very important that the student is adequately prepared, right? So we can get different outcomes. Most of the cases I've encountered so far is cases where the Viva supports the recommendations, where all three examiners have passed the students and they've not found a reason to change the outcome. In that case, it's understood that provided the student has done or adequately addressed all the examiner's comments, they may go ahead and graduate. And the same applies to the minor correction category. For the major correction, I did make you aware that the thesis may need to be sent back to the examiner just so that the examiner can be sure that all the corrections were addressed, but there's no further Viva beyond that. And then you can also
Properly,
get, sorry,
can
yes,
I
yeah.
just interject? Sorry. There are part of your presentation that is hidden. There's a part that is hidden, and we
Okay,
cannot see like the
it's
full screen.
hidden.
Is it
Okay,
possible? Yes.
okay, let me just try and see what I can do about that. Sorry. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. It's showing clearly on my original slide, but when I put it on slideshow, it's another story. Um, Maybe I should go off slideshow for them to just see. Can I do
Okay,
that?
because I think yes, because I think it's only for this slide. The
Yeah,
other
so
slide we could see clearly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just do that then. Okay, I think everyone should be able to see it now. Can everyone see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, yeah, it was just a projection problem. So you can get the case where all accept, and that's a straightforward, all agree that there's minor corrections, and there that's just the case of the student doing the minor corrections under the guidance of the supervisor and submitting it. It doesn't need to be seen again by the examiner. Then we get the case where there's major corrections and these are addressed during the Viva and the student makes the changes. The examiner checks it again before giving the final rubber stamp, and then there's no further Viva. Now, you can also get the case where two examiners recommend a minor and the third examiner recommends a major revision. Um, you can, in this case, get a case where after the Viva, the third examiner agrees with the other two, and in that case, you can still proceed with the minor corrections and so on. You can also get a case where two of them recommend major changes and one recommends minor, and then that case, the Viva also provides an opportunity for them to change their mind. So basically, what I'm trying to get at there is you can change the examiner's decision depending on how the Viva is prepared and presented. So sometimes examiners just read the written thesis and they make a decision based on that, but after listening to the student, they may realize, okay, the student knows what he or she is doing, so I'm not going to stand in the way. Whatever comments I made can be taken as minor corrections. So it does have that positive influence, and I think it is important for supervisors to highlight this to students so that they don't have that terrible monster image of the Viva in their minds as well. Okay, I'm going to go back to slideshow now. Okay, Let me just go to my next slide. So some points that we as supervisors need to highlight to students when preparing them for the VIVA is that nobody really wants them to fail, because they must not see this VIVA presentation as a platform where they've got to fail. It's not like that, right? So we need to instill that positive mindset into them. We also need to make the student understand that he or she knows and understands better what work they've done. And for a PhD candidate, you would expect them to know the ins and outs of what they've done. And then we also need to make them aware that it's about progression and further development. Now, no work that is produced in a PhD thesis is completely perfect. There will always be recommendations for future work, room for improvement. So the candidate, when preparing and when is questioned by the examiner, must acknowledge that as well. So maybe the examiner thought of something that you didn't think of. You can say to the examiner, "Thank you for the suggestion. I didn't think about that, but yes, going forward for future work, I will look into it." So see it as that type of interaction that you can have with the examiner. And it's meant to be constructive criticism that is geared towards making the quality of the work better as well going forward. So we need to instill this in students so that they are aware that the VIVA is not meant to be some monster that's going to eat them up. So when preparing for the VIVA, I know I did say earlier on that perhaps this is scheduled within 2 weeks, and of the examiner's reports being in, and the examiner's comments do guide us, but I would encourage preparation in advance. As soon as the student submits the thesis, start getting him or her to prepare the slides and to do practice sessions. That helps as well. Then when the narrative reports come in, you can study that for possible questions. And some examiners do help the process. They do let you know in advance things that are they're gonna highlight during the VIVA, because another process that we've adopted at UJ is on the nomination of assessor form, you need to declare that all three examiners have been informed that there will be an oral exam as well. So many of them get the thesis well, they should get the thesis for examination with the understanding that there's an oral exam as well. So some of them do help. They do highlight points that they would like to see come across in the oral defense. And we need to remember that no study is perfect. There will be things that we never thought about, that the students never thought about. So therefore, we must acknowledge the weaknesses and state, look, going forward, this is how we are going to improve, and thank you for your suggestions. So we must justify the very important thing that the examiners look for in an oral defense is how the candidate justifies the original contribution in the work, because really that is the important criteria that's used to explain why the PhD study was undertaken in the first place. And this is what enables a candidate to obtain a PhD. The candidate must also be prepared for future-orientated questions, because some candidates may want to continue with postdoc, or they may even want to work as academics, in which they need to build a research profile. So they must be prepared to answer these future-orientated questions, because you never know, the examiner themselves may offer a postdoc, or they may know someone in the field that the student can work with. Now, it's important for us to encourage students to be honest during their presentation. Do not say, yes, I thought of the idea, when you didn't, right? Acknowledge that you did not think about it, and the examiner may have a point, and you will take it into consideration. And the very important point as well for students to bear in mind is they must not be nervous or anxious, because nervousness and anxiety can make you forget even the simplest of things. I had a case where a PhD student answered a question during the practice session perfectly. She knew exactly what she was talking about, but the examiners asked her the same question and she froze. She couldn't answer it, but they sort of picked that up because it was written in her thesis. So they didn't take it into consideration when deciding on the final outcome. But the last thing that any student must do is to be nervous or anxious. Okay, so these are the basic guidelines that I wanted to take you to. So thank you very much for taking time to listen to me. And now I'm opening the floor to answer any questions or queries that you may have.
Thank
Okay.
you very much, Prof. Pillay, for outlining that process. For us, I think it's very important, for both supervisors to get this knowledge and also the postgraduate students. I think for the PhD students, it looks like it's a very scary process. So it's better if we know what to expect and we are familiar with such a process so that we prepare ourselves beforehand. So thank you for just outlining that process for us. And I see some hands are already up, so I will just allow everyone's mic so that those who have questions can just unmute from their side and then ask the questions. So just a moment while I allow everyone's mic. Okay, so there we go. So if you have a question on your side, you can just unmute yourself and speak. So let me just go to the list so that I can just pick. Eva, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. This presentation was very insightful. Hello, please, can you hear me?
I'm struggling to hear you, Eva. There's an echo in the background.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you better now.
Hello. Please, can
Hello,
I be
yes,
heard?
Eva, I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Your presentation was very insightful. And in fact, I picked some key notes that I'll take into consideration when my
Okay, sorry, Eva, we seem to have lost you. You're breaking up. Can anyone else hear her?
Eva, are
J,
you?
but it's say a friend or a family to the candidate and wants to be part of the process.
Okay, sorry, Eva, I need you to say it again because we lost you for a while.
Okay, Prof, can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. I want to find out if external audience can be part of the VIVA, whether virtual or in person. Say the audience is not part of, it's not a UJ student, but it's a friend or a family too, the candidate, and wants to observe the VIVA process. Can the person be allowed? Thank you, Prof.
Okay, it all depends on the department, right? In our department, yes, we do allow family members. If they are willing and available, we do allow them. I mean, I had a case where one of my PhD students was married to a postdoc in the department. So because he was the husband, we allowed him to attend as well. Yeah, so that can, but it all depends on your department and what the non-assessing chair allows. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be allowed because it's also a celebration of your work, which your family should be a part of. And one day when you become a professor and you do your inaugural lecture, your family is going to be invited for that anyway. All right. I hope that adequately answers your question.
Yes, Prof, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, I think the next person who's got a question is Mayowa.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
Thank you for that beautiful presentation. But my only question is on the criteria that must be met before the Viva voice. I think in UJ, I heard recently from someone that if you're in Faculty of Engineering, that you must present a review, you must have published a review paper and a technical paper. But someone was telling me recently that in UJ, review paper is not a criteria again. It's not something that you have to publish before your Viva was, that you only need a technical paper. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. A PhD candidate should have at least one publication by the time of submission, and it has to be based on the candidate's results. A review paper is allowed, and it does have an impact or enables the candidate to write the literature review chapter in the thesis, but it's not it does not meet the criteria of minimum of one publication, because that has to be based on the candidate's actual results. So across UJ, the criteria is by the time you're ready to submit your thesis or have your results approved, you need to have at least one paper that's been published or at least accepted for publication. So that is a rule. Now, it all depends as well on what route you and the supervisor chose. We also have the thesis by publication criteria, and for that, you need to have published at least 3 papers based on your results by the time of examination. Okay, so Mayowa, I hope that that adequately answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, I want to now give Kwena an opportunity.
Good morning, and thank you very much for an insightful presentation. You were so clear, and I don't regret having joined this morning. When I raised my hand, I had one question, but I would like to take advantage of this platform and pick from the previous delegate who asked a question about the papers. I am in the Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, and we can take advantage of courses that are for either engineering or construction management. Now, in terms of the paper that you're submitting, can it be in construction or it has to be strictly in engineering? Because as a faculty, you can see it's broad, but it would have been a paper that has been published. I don't know whether it makes sense in whatever I'm saying. And before I go to the last question, or I can ask it as well.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I understood the question correctly. So you want to know, does the paper have to be published by the time the student is ready to graduate, or can it be a paper that's in progress? Is that what you're asking me?
No. Thank you for that. I am saying, since it's a doctorate, and the faculty has engineering and construction legs within itself.
Okay.
So if your master's was, say for argument's sake, in engineering, to be exact, and your PhD is in construction, do you need a new paper linked to the field of study, or we take it as a paper that has been peer reviewed? So that is what I was trying to ask.
Okay, so basically you're saying you've got a master's in engineering, now you're undertaking a PhD in construction.
Correct.
And it's under the same faculty.
Correct.
Right? So basically you're saying to me that if you got a publication from your master's, can you use that towards your PhD? Is that what you're asking?
Not to build up, because remember,
To build
sometimes
up on your master's. All right,
yes,
look,
exactly.
I'm not an expert on the engineering field, but if your supervisors feel that there were knowledge gaps in the master's that need to be filled in construction in the PhD, that's fine. And it's still making an original contribution, and you can still publish on it. That is fine. That can be
Thank you.
done. So your
Thank you.
supervisors would be the best judge of that.
Lovely.
And we now remember with 4IR and AI and whatever, we're moving towards multidisciplinary research. So that can be allowed. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
The
Okay.
original question is, when you were dealing with a slide on possible outcomes,
Yes.
you indicated an example whereby there were three examiners,
Yes.
and the two agreed. Allow me to borrow the agreed part of it, and the other one did not agree. You had to go out and source a fourth one, and the fourth one came to the conclusion as the other two. Then it becomes, a bit of a challenge in terms of how we can strengthen the processes within the department itself, because something looks to be amiss in the whole thing. Thank you.
Yes, no, I was talking about an experience that I had where two examiners passed the student with minor corrections, right? And then a third examiner recommended resubmission. So the student addressed all the comments, resubmitted it, and then after the resubmission, the examiner just decided to reject the thesis. Now, so that sort of left the outcome in a deadlock situation where I had to approach the HOD for advice. And the HOD said to me, look, two examiners have passed the student. The student also had two publications. So he said to me, the recommendation from the department is to write a memo to the vice dean or faculty to allow the appointment of a fourth examiner. So that is what we did. And the fourth examiner also passed the student with minor corrections. And then thereafter, we scheduled the Viva to conclude the PhD, right? So if that happens, we don't schedule the Viva, we appoint another examiner. And that examiner who now, after resubmission, rejected it, is not invited to the Viva, okay? But yes, I agree with you. Processes like that should not happen. And therefore, we need to be very careful when choosing examiners. And also, the thing is, the criteria that's stipulated for the choice of examiner is quite strict. I'm not allowed to appoint somebody that I know personally. It has to be someone that I've never known before. I just need to randomly find a person, get them to agree. So that also brings in these challenges in the process. But yes, I agree. We need to look at where, how, and where, and what criteria we need to follow when choosing examiners, okay? I don't know whether I've adequately addressed your concern there, Kwena.
Prof, you did. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Um, Eva, your hand is still up. Is that a historic hand?
Yes, my apologies. It's a historic hand.
Okay. Okay, sure. Let me give Patricia an
Uh,
opportunity.
hi, Prof. Sorry, can I quickly jump in?
Yeah,
I'm stepping
sure.
into another meeting. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing a PhD publication, let's say I've published about 3 articles, and I go to the examination and it's rejected.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that stand, especially if my publications have been accepted and have been published?
No, then your department and faculty needs to bring on board. Are you saying that all three examiners rejected after you
Um,
publish?
No, well, I'm just going by the scenario that you gave. Maybe let's say one or two, or let's just say for argument's sake, one or two of them have rejected the study, and but I have accepted publications. What happens then?
Well, basically, what the faculty and the department need to do is they need to decide whether to bring on board an expert advisor or an arbitrator to deliberate on the final outcome before the Viva is even scheduled. because in that particular case, usually with the PhD, if you've published, how can you be refused a PhD? So an expert advisor or an arbitrator needs to come on board to decide now, this, let's look at all the publications, the thesis, the examiner's comments, and help the faculty and the department make a final decision on that. Okay? I hope that's helped you.
Thanks. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay. Sorry, Patricia, I want to now give you an opportunity to ask your question.
Thank you so much, Prof. And good morning to everyone, my colleagues and the facilitator. Prof, thanks for the presentation. It is well articulated. Thank you so much. I've been taking notes on my side. I'm not sure whether we are going to get the presentation slides or not. That's the first one. And just to go straight to the slide on preparation for VIVA, you've mentioned one needs to study the narrative reports for possible questions. Can the prof just assist on that one, just to understand exactly in terms of the process? Once I've prepared in advance, we said we should prepare in advance slides and practice and study the narrative reports for possible questions, just to know how does that one work and what does it mean?
Okay,
Thank you, Prof.
firstly, on your question as to whether you're going to get the slides, the moderator did indicate that after the session, I'm going to email the slides to RCD and they will share it with you. So
Thank
you
you.
will get my presentation slides. Now, concerning your second query about preparing in advance, yes, now that we've had a few vivas where other students have presented and you probably have attended to see what goes on, you can prepare while you're awaiting your examination results. You can prepare your presentation based on what you've seen highlighted from other students that may have undergone. So my advice there is attend the VIVA sessions in your department. I mean, most departments do allow students and other staff members to attend. Attend it, see what goes on, and prepare your presentation according to that. And then your supervisor may also schedule some practice sessions with you in which he or she will guide you, right? But when the narrative reports come in, the examiner will give, provided they've done the examination properly, they will highlight what are the positive points in the thesis or what they have concerns about. So you can then modify your presentation to address their concerns. So whatever they were not happy with when they examined the thesis, you can highlight and say, you were not happy about this aspect. This is how I've addressed it, and this is how I intend correcting it in the final thesis. And also you may get questions based on that. So prepare how to answer it. Okay. So that's basically what I'm saying there, Patricia.
Oh, thank you so much, Prof. Really appreciate.
Okay. All right. Dave, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Professor. Thank you very much for a great presentation. It was in my spam folder, unfortunately, so I missed the first half of it, and I went, oh, flip, I need to attend this. I'm a bit of an odd case here compared to the rest of the audience, in that I'm a master's by research student, and my goal is to write a master's paper that's on the level of a PhD paper, just maybe with a few less words. I know I like to make my life difficult. And already there's a huge amount of innovation in the paper, like ridiculous amounts, probably more than even in a PhD paper. So my question is, do you have any tips for someone like me that would be intending to upgrade the paper, but obviously I need to make sure that the master's paper is actually on the level of a PhD, but I've got 45,000 words rather than 80,000 to do it in. Any tips or suggestions?
Well, Dave, firstly, which discipline are you from?
Philosophy.
Philosophy. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, in that particular case, I would say approach your supervisor about upgrading the master's to a PhD first.
Okay.
And then you can go the route of publishing that PhD paper that you're planning. Because if it's got innovation in it, okay, with papers, whether it's published at master's or PhD level, they always look for novelty in the work, right? So in that case, you may have a strong case for you to upgrade your master's to your PhD, to a PhD. So I would say sit down with your supervisor. Obviously, your supervisor is the subject expert. I know absolutely nothing about philosophy. I'm a scientist and a chemist, and things may operate differently in the philosophy field, but I would say the first step here is for you to sit with your supervisor and co-supervisor and look into the possibility of upgrading your master's to a PhD. Okay?
Okay, cool.
Okay. All
Thank you
right.
very much.
Okay. Karike, can I give you an opportunity now?
Hi, thank you, Professor. My question links a little bit to what Patricia asked. In the preparation for our VIVA, I have never been afforded the opportunity to attend other doctoral students' VIVA. I mean, can I be that presumptuous to ask the faculty whether they will be open to inviting us so we can get a better idea of the structure of the presentation? Or is there something that could guide us on that?
Well, basically, your faculty is supposed to have policy documents guiding on that. So you need to ask your supervisor or faculty to make you privy to that policy document so you can see how it operates. And I think it's a process that needs to be facilitated by your supervisor. The supervisor needs to um, give you an idea of what goes on. If it's not your faculty or your department's policy to invite you to other students' VIVA, then your supervisor needs to give you a good grounding or some guidelines as to what happens in a VIVA. Yeah, but we don't stand in the way of allowing other students to attend. They need to see what happens in an oral defense so that they know what they are facing when it's their turn. So our department and our faculty opens it up to attendance by other students as well. But I don't know, your faculty may be different, their policies may be different. So I would say sit down with your supervisor, see if you can become privy to the policies on that, and then you can take it from there. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. All right, Regawe, sorry, please pardon me if I mispronounced your name. Go ahead and ask your question.
No problem at all, Prof. I might have missed the information regarding this. My network is not really stable. But firstly, I just want to say thank you for the session because it is very insightful knowing about the processes that actually happen. My question was, when we go for the VIVA, should we have publications by then from our PhD studies, or we go through the process and then think about publishing afterwards, especially if we are in the academic space?
Okay, I would encourage everyone, based on the fact that PhD is that publication is a criteria for you to graduate with your PhD, is rather have the publication in the bag. And also when you're presenting and you highlight to the examiners that I've published. This strengthens your chances of being approved without any questions. So I would say I always encourage my PhD students, the minute they've got the first set of results, start writing the first paper. Because by the time you get to the stage where you're ready to submit the thesis, you know you've got at least that one publication in the bag that's not going to stop you from graduating. Okay, so I would say it's a better idea to work on the publications first, then put together your thesis, and you know by the time of submitting your minimum one publication is there. Okay, so that's really the advice I would give to you. I hope that helps you.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Sophie, Go ahead and ask your question. Sophie, I think you are muted. Please unmute your mic. Okay, it seems like Sophie is unmuted. Can one of the moderators help? Oh, now we seem to have lost her. Okay, Collins,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an opportunity.
Morning, Prof.
Morning.
Prof, I just wanted to ask, it's a follow-up question from one of the colleagues that asked earlier. It was with regards to the examiners. So it's often than not, it has become when when you are getting an examiner or nominating an examiner, the kind of examiners that are nominated, is it a lot of examiners that have experience? Because most of the times, new PhD examiners within the first 5 years tend to be they want to prove that they know what they're doing. So at times they tend to be very hard on students. So I just wanted to ask, when examiners are being nominated, do they look at the experience on or how long this examiner has been um, in the field, or has been a professor or has had a PhD? Thank you.
Okay. All right, Collins. Yes, there are processes in place to check that. Usually what we do in our faculty and department is the supervisor chooses the examiners and submits the nomination of assessor form together with the CVs to a departmental committee. So the departmental committee reviews that. And yes, we do guard against using too many inexperienced examiners, but we also take into consideration the fact that these newcomers need to be given some kind of a start in examining a PhD or whatever. So if we have a fair balance of experienced and inexperienced examiners. So, for example, there might be two examiners that are professors and they've extensively examined, but the third one is not so extensively experienced. Then they do allow that. But if you've got three inexperienced examiners or two inexperienced and one experienced, then our department and our faculty guards against approving that, right? For the same reasons or concerns that you've raised. But unfortunately, sometimes you can get an experienced examiner who just, for some reason, just wants to reject. And so we've had those cases. And in that case, that's where your department and your faculty comes in to advise on the process that needs to be followed. And that's why we've got processes in place where a fourth examiner or even an expert advisor or an arbitrator can come on board to ensure that the student gets a fair examination at the end of the day. I hope that helps you, Collins.
Yes, it sure does. But just based on how the first that's one of the follow-up that I was following up had brought to it, that we need to strengthen such processes that helps to not disadvantage students, because I have sat down in HDC, so I've seen whereby it is not my mandate to speak on, and then but you can see already that if the way certain things were done, it has disadvantaged students, that some students might not end up even graduating because they lose because time is of the essence. So that's why I'm just asking.
Yeah, and look, unfortunately, sometimes we as supervisors have no control. You pick up a CV and it looks fantastic, and you have no way of knowing what's on the examiner's mind and what he's doing. So these are cases that do crop up, but in that particular case, we do have processes in place to favor the student as far as possible. So I think, but I think what we need to now also do is our faculties started this initiative where they've got a list on which they've red flagged examiners. So examiners that take too long to submit the reports or delay the student, or examiners that have given clear unfair assessments, they are put on a red flag list. So now the department and faculty doesn't approve that anymore. And we even have in our departmental committee other supervisors who've had bad experiences with certain examiners. And then they say, no, I don't recommend that you use this examiner for this reason. So we've put those processes in place in our department and faculty. All right.
Okay, just one final question.
Yeah,
Prof,
sure.
how do we protect against colleagues, disgruntled colleagues who are against each other, but maybe chair of different units in terms of in terms of, I don't know how to put it, but at times the conflict of interest, and yeah, that's all I'll just say. How do we protect against? I am, you're a professor. You're the one chairing a particular. You're the one chairing maybe the examining committee, and I'm in a different committee, but I just want to prove to you, because there's an issue between both professors or between both parties. How do we protect students against falling into such um if I can call it squabbles between colleagues?
Okay. Well, if that person is not your head of department, your head of department needs to intervene and resolve that. But if it is the head of department, then the dean or vice dean needs to get involved and resolve that. Because committee members are not meant to be biased against each other or have conflicts of interests. And so some higher authority, like a head of department or a vice dean or a dean, needs to be involved in that. Okay.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay. Okay. All right. Alexis, please ask your question.
Good morning, Professor. I think you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good morning, everybody. Professor, thank you so much for your presentation. I would like to hear more about publication. What can be the topic of the publication? Is it linked to the dissertation topic? Can the publication be co-authored? I want to hear more. Thank you.
Okay. Alexis, if I'm getting you correctly, you are talking about that requirement of a minimum of one publication by the time of examination. Is that's the publication? Well, you can have co-authors, and most of the time you do, because your supervisor is a co-author, and so is the co-supervisor and other collaborators or other students who you may have worked with. But the important thing is you need to be the first author, right?
Okay.
So it shows evidence that it's your original work. The other important thing is it cannot be disconnected from your PhD thesis. It has to be related to the topic that you investigated for your PhD. Okay?
Yes, and it cannot be a chapter of one of the chapters of my dissertation, no?
Well, basically, your papers make up your experimental chapters. But now with that Turnitin process, you may find this a bit tricky, whereby you've published the paper and you cannot just directly copy and paste into your thesis chapter, because Turnitin picks that up as self-plagiarism. So in that case, you may have to do some rewording on your chapter and write your PhD thesis in a format where it's not so obvious that you've just pasted your paper into the chapter. So that's, yeah. But basically, for me, your PhD publications constitute the experimental chapters in your thesis. So it is a chapter in your thesis, but you need to guard against these plagiarism issues because you got to be careful because one of the requirements we have in our faculty is that the Turnitin report has to be submitted with the thesis before it goes out for examination. So when you check the percentage similarity on Turnitin, which often picks it up as a self-plagiarism, you got to be careful about that. Or your supervisor has to write a motivation indicating that the reason why it's showing that percentage similarity is because that chapter is related to your publication. Okay, so
Oh,
that's what needs to be done there, but it depends on your faculty and what their requirements are.
yeah, that's fine. Then I think, for example, I can think about if there would be a future research, I can maybe write on what can be a future research related to my PhD dissertation.
Well, that would constitute more a review article, because
Okay.
that's where you actually do this. So you can review papers on that topic and your own work, and then indicate this is what I consider to be future research perspectives. But it would make, to me, it would make more sense for it to be part of a review article, which can also be part of your literature review as well.
All right. Thank you, Professor.
Okay. All right, Mbete.
Thank you, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity. The presentation is very informative. Mine is based on how long is the VIVA? Does it go with the flow of your presentation, or does an individual get to be given the time of their presentation and how long the whole session is going to take? And also, do you get time for like setting up your setting in terms of, let's say your Viva is done online, as where you are? I attended another presentation where they said the when your Viva is on, the examiners need to see you. You need to be present all the time. So what I need to know is there a time frame that is given before the session and while you doing your presentation? That's my question. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, I can't answer that on behalf of all departments and all faculties because it may differ, but I can tell you what happens in our department and our faculty, right? Typically, we give the PhD candidate between 60 and 90 minutes to present. So that alone can
Okay.
go up to 1.5 hours because we've taken into consideration the fact that it's a whole PhD thesis that needs to be presented, right? So we given the candidate enough time. But what happens usually is an administrator contacts the examiners for their availability, and she will check with them, say, for example, are you be available between 11 and 1 o'clock? So we typically allow plus minus 3 hours there. Then if the examiners confirm that, then we go ahead and we schedule. But in terms of your setting up, that has to happen before the Viva starts. So if it's scheduled from 10 to 1 o'clock, you want to start on the dot of 10. So before 10 o'clock, you need to be in the venue that you're presenting from, have your slides and everything ready. Now, what we do in our department is we've got a video conferencing room, and we do have an instrument technician who helps the students to set up their presentation, make sure the audio and the video and everything is working in advance, and then we get the examiners to join on Teams, and then we oversee and check the whole process. So your department or your faculty must have all those processes in place, but the time allowed may vary from faculty to faculty or department to department. What I've noticed in our faculty is that not all departments are following that guideline of 60 to 90 minutes. Some of them are shortening it to as little as 20 minutes. I had a case where I co-supervised a student in another department, and he was only given initially 15 minutes. And I had to say to the main supervisor, please be reasonable and realize that this is a PhD thesis, so allow more time. And then I see they increased it to 25 minutes. So it depends on, but what I would say would work best is if your faculty has a clear guideline document, then your supervisor can follow that. Okay. Does that help you, Mbete?
Thank you very much, Prof. It does. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Okay. Alexis? Sorry, Alexis, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, Professor. I think I am done. I was asking about publication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am done. You
You done?
responded
Oh,
to me.
so it's an historic hand that's up. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
Sophie, I see you've back now. Go ahead and ask your question.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for the presentation. On my side, I just wanted clarity. In a situation where the publication was done and then for some reason it was actually what you call deleted from that specific journal, how can a person go and try to reinstate that article or journal? That's the first question. And then the second question, in a situation where we are actually running with what you call a concurrent method, in a way where you are using a convergent method because you are combining two different what you call analysis. Is there any system there that can be able to actually combine the results? Because I'm talking about currently we've got SPSS and then also on the Atlas TI, but I'm actually concerned about the one system that can be used to combine both of the results in order to make them presentable so that they can be able to show the feedback that we actually got. Because currently the only thing that I'm actually pick up is actually you actually sit with the manual processing and running of it. So those are my two questions that I'm actually have regarding the recall of the document and then also the convergent one, not the embedded one, but the convergent one. That's where I'm actually having a concern. Thank you so much.
Okay, your first question regarding a publication with the journal being deleted, are you saying that you submitted the article and then it got deleted?
One of the publication that I saw that they did publish a journal, and for some reason then it was actually cancelled to say they need to remove it completely from their publication history. I don't know the reason why, but in that situation as a student, if we face that phase, what can we do?
Well, that process needs to be facilitated by your supervisor. Obviously, is your supervisor the corresponding author?
Not yet.
Not yet. So are
Yes.
you saying to me you submitted a publication without your supervisor being involved?
Yes, because it's a different topic. It's for example, currently I'm in business, but what was published was something has to do with HR.
Okay, now I'm not sure how other faculties and departments operate, but basically the rule at UJ is your supervisor needs to submit the paper on your behalf. So the supervisor needs to be the corresponding author. I mean, that's a guideline that we follow in our faculty, right? And the reason why we have that process in place is to guard against these things happening. because your supervisor is supposed to read the paper, make his or her contribution, then tell you, okay, now it's ready for submission, so send me all the documents, and I submit to the journal. So I would advise you to sit down with whoever your supervisor is and look at reasons for why that could have been rejected, and then discuss a way forward in terms of getting it accepted by another journal. Okay, that's your first case. Then your second question about linking to processes, I'm afraid I'm not in a position to advise you on that, because it doesn't sound like my discipline or my area of expertise. And there again, I think you need to sit with whoever's supervising your work on the two projects and look at a possibility of a multidisciplinary research there. So basically, there needs to be a supervisor or supervision involved there, Sophie. I'm afraid I know that the PhD is about an individual showing independence, but you still need a supervisor to guide you there. Okay? Does that help you, Sophie?
Okay, thank you so much. It does.
Okay. All right. So, Patricia, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, good morning, Prof, and good morning,
Good morning.
everyone. Thank you very much for the insightful presentation. So my question is more like a little digression from what you've presented. I want to know how you select your examiners and how one qualifies to become an examiner. Thank you very much.
Okay, I did, in fact, give a presentation. I think it was sometime in August on that. So I'm going to ask you to please liaise with the RCD. They will share that presentation and the links with you. But basically, what you've, well, every faculty and department has got guidelines and documents in terms of the selection of examiners. So you've got to identify for a PhD 3 examiners that are experts in the field of study. And one of them has to be an international assessor. Now, there's various means to do that. It could be someone you've met at a conference, or someone that a colleague may recommend to you. So what I'm going to advise you to do is, Patricia, is have a look at that presentation that I did in August for RCD, and that will guide you on the matter. Okay. Does that help you?
Yes, Prof. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I now have Clarity, who's got a question.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think we really needed it. I've got a couple of questions. So my
Yeah,
first
sure.
question is, you say that the VIVA is done once all the 3 examiners brings or return the reports.
Yes, it's usually within 2 weeks
2 weeks.
of the reports being received.
Okay. That being said, my question now is, does the student has a say on the actual date of the presentation itself?
Does a student have a say on the?
On the date, like who sets the date to say the VIVA is going to be done on Wednesday 15th or on Monday 20th, something like that? Who organized that? Or it's just a direct communication from the faculty and supervisor to say, this is the date that you're supposed to be presenting? How does it work?
Well, basically in our department, we've got an administrator assisting the non-assessing chair, right?
Okay.
So that assistant then checks with the non-assessing chair, the supervisor, and the examiners on the availability. And then the student gets told, your VIVA is taking place on this day and whatever, please be ready and please prepare for it. So basically the student doesn't really have a say. If there is an extenuating circumstance, like the student is ill or in hospital or whatever, then he or she contacts the supervisor, and then the supervisor can inform both the administrator and the non-assessing chair, who then communicates with the examiners to reschedule, right?
Okay.
But that's only if there's a crisis or an extenuating circumstance. But most of the time, it's the supervisor, the non-assessing chair, and administrator that's facilitating the process that decides that the VIVA is taking place on the state. Okay?
Okay. I think thank you for the second part where you said considering that there would be in like if you're sick, they can then take that into consideration. Then my
Yeah.
second question is, let's say you say that on our examiners there will be like one international examiner. Assuming that he's not available physically, then the last option would be to do an online session of the VIVA. So now my question is, let's say the international examiner says, I'm going to be present for the physical, but as a student, you are not, because some of us, we are international students, then we are not able to be available physically. Can the process then be, can we be accommodated to say, despite the examiners being able to be there in person, the VIVA can be done online because of the student?
Yes, we do make provision for that in our department and faculty. We have had cases where students, I mean, I had a case where my student was in Nigeria and he couldn't come to South Africa, so we arranged for him to present virtually. So that option is available depending on the circumstances of the student.
Okay.
And it also is up to your department and your faculty. And one thing I didn't highlight in my presentation is we follow a format whereby if all three examiners are not available on the same day, at least two of them must be available. And then the third examiner gives his consensus that he's okay with the VIVA going ahead with him not being available, right? So
Okay.
we do have a minimum of two of the examiners must actually be available as well. Okay.
Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much, Prof. I'm
Okay.
answered.
Okay, thank you. Idowu, sorry, again, pardon me if I mispronounced your name.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Thanks for the presentation. I'd like to ask about the publication, thesis by publication. And number one, how is the thesis written? And number two, in regards to similarity index, since the works have been published, how do one go around that in terms of writing a
Okay.
thesis?
Okay. I did indicate earlier on that you've got to have a minimum of 3 papers published by the time of examination. So usually what happens in that case when you're compiling the thesis, you got to have your introduction, a literature review, which can also be a review article, right? And then you put together all your papers with your results. So the actual paper that's been published is put there. So you don't actually have that problem with similarity index. It's understood that it's a compilation of papers, right? You put that together and then you have a conclusion and recommendation for future work. So that is the guideline that we follow in our faculty. I presume it's pretty much the same in other faculties, but I think your faculty should have a policy document in place where your supervisor can follow that and guide you along those lines as well. Okay? Does that help you, Idowu?
Yes, that helps. Thank you, Prof.
Okay. Kwenyane? Kwenyane, sorry. Excuse my mispronunciations. Can you hear me? Kwenyani? Hello?
It looks like we cannot hear Kwenyani.
Yes.
Would you rather type your question on the chat box and then we can read it out? Kwenyani, if you can't speak, because we can't hear you at the moment.
Okay. All right, no problem. I'll attend to that once you read it out to me. Kwena, go ahead and ask your question.
Prof, thank you very much. You continue to mention that if your department or your faculty will agree, if you said it repeatedly,
Yeah.
but from outside, when we look at UJ, we don't see faculties and departments. We see one credible institution. But if I knew English very well, I would refrain from the word that I'm going to use, but I see a lot of mediocrity from other faculties, and I'm saying it with respect, because when you've got standards that are set by UJM, especially you, it looks like it's your key component of what you do on a daily basis, setting these standards on research and everything. And there was a speaker earlier on who but the way he presented is like he's got better understanding of what is happening within the UJ as it is. There is so much frustration that we get as researchers from certain faculties and departments. I happen to know a whole lot of people across the UJ. So how can you improve on this thing? Because you cannot have one faculty doing as they wish, whereas we want to uphold the name of UJ itself. I hope I'm clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is a matter where Senex or Senate needs to be involved because basically, if we want to operate as one university, then there has to be some consistency amongst faculties. What I did pick up by being a Senex member, sometimes when it comes to promotion, each faculty has their own point system. And now I brought that to their attention and they started looking at ways of making that more uniform. So I think maybe the Senate or the management executive committee of the university needs to be involved in ensuring that the processes and procedures followed by different faculties is well aligned to each other. That's the only way to do it. The higher management needs to be involved. And one needs to bear in mind that the VIVA is relatively new to most of us. So in a way, most of us are still finding our feet with it. And basically, like I mentioned earlier in my presentation, it was only the Faculty of Humanities that was offering this option for the student to present this VIVA, and then other faculties came on board after the recommendation by CHE. So it's still a relatively new process, but I think higher management can get involved in standardizing matters between faculties. Okay, does that help you, Kwena?
Prof, it does help me. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Keep up being the voice of the students. UJ is a brand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kwena. So there's no other hands. Oh, sorry, I can see Quinyani. Your hand is up again. Did you type your question on the chat box?
I don't see a question from Kwenyane, but
Okay.
let's allow him or her to speak, and then if they can't, then I'll go to the chats just to see some of the questions that are there.
Okay, sure.
Kwenyane, are you able to speak? No. So we also have a hand from Collins. Collins, you may go ahead before I go to the chat.
Hi, Prof.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, with the University of Johannesburg, is there a system whereby most of the academics who are now supervisors that they go through some management training, because it's at a point it's as if a lot of people have poor management understanding, and with that they bring in myopic ways of doing things, which end frustrating students. So it tends to be the students are not being treated as a stakeholder, but as a king and a slave kind of mentality. So the thing is that I'm saying this because if I disagree, does not mean because one thing is that disagreeing does not mean that one is being insultive or one is being trying to be. But it's only when people agree to disagree that innovation at times comes out, and it cannot be that it's like saying that you're in chemical engineering and somebody
Sorry.
who has done maths and in terms of maths now there are 5 ways in solving a particular problem, and you know the whole 5 ways. So if I use any of the methods, you would be able to understand. But now we have a person who only understands one method, and now you use another method and he doesn't understand that method, and you might not even understand his own method. And at the end of the day, because you have disagreed on the method of being of usage, it now leads to the grievance, and that grievance, because there's a poor mindset of dealing with issues, you now become a target, and they could just victimize you from that perspective. I just wanted to know there is any if there's any possibilities of most of the supervisors that or most of our academics will go through proper management training to know how to deal with because management is totally a skill. So thank you.
Yes, there is training available at UJ for supervisors. Currently, but I've been informed this is the last year, and as of next year, a Faculty of Education is going to offer it. There is a postgraduate diploma in postgraduate supervision, which was offered by RCD. And I am one of the facilitators who participated in that. So that option is available to supervisors, but as of next year, it will be offered by Faculty of Education, and RCD does make every effort to offer whatever training programs they are available to supervisors. So to answer you on that, I think maybe supervisors need to start engaging more with RCD to see what's on offer, and even getting information about that postgraduate diploma in research supervision. But in terms of the problem you've highlighted to me, it looks like it might be a matter where a head of department needs to be involved to sort out the dilemma between student and supervisor. So generally, the protocol that we offer there is if you cannot see eye to eye with your supervisor or agree on a matter, it gets escalated to the head of department or a deputy HOD that can assist you with the matter. If it cannot be resolved within the department, then the dean or vice dean needs to be involved there. Okay? I'm not sure whether that helps you.
Prof, it to a certain level it does. Because why I would say that because at times, I'm not at times some of the perpetrators might even be because most of the colleagues are all friends. So I give an example. There's hierarchy of management, and the theory and practice of management guides us in everything we do. And then let's say one person is a senior lecturer, one is an associate professor, and one is a full professor, and one could be an emeritus professor. Based on the hierarchy, some people do not want to. So I do understand that amongst academics, you don't necessarily have to be a full professor to be a HOD. It's done, it's rotated on department by department or faculty by faculty. So a senior lecturer can eventually emerge as the HOD, and the person that's supervising the student now is a full professor, and now there's an issue there between the professor and student, and now the HOD now does not want to get involved because the person who is in question is even far senior than the person, if we're looking at it from that perspective. So I'm just asking in terms of it's more about professionality, and not to say because someone has disagreed with you you now want to inflict outcomes of the person, or saying, okay, you make yourself a kingmaker and saying the person is not going to graduate, and those kind of views. That's all I'm just saying. Thank you.
Okay, then I believe that your dean needs to get involved there. Okay? If it cannot be resolved by the head of department, then the next step is to escalate it to the dean. That's all I can say from my side there. Okay? All right. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Prof. Pillay. And part of your answer spoke of the research capacity development unit. So, as much as we do have, a community for postgraduate students, we also do have for supervisors, so that we can offer workshops that are able to help them in the supervision journey. So, they can also make use of the feedback survey, just to, give some of the topics or that they want us to cover, and we will organize workshops based on their suggestions and what they need help with, and then we definitely do organize workshops for that, so they can also make use of this opportunity. I will now go to the chat. There's a question that was raised earlier on in the beginning of the session from Jabulani, and it says, where does one get the template to populate to defend their topic? Not sure if there is actually a template that needs to be populated. Prof. Pillay.
Well, at the moment, as far as I know, there is no set template, and that can be decided between the student and the supervisor when preparing for the VIVA, because they are the people who have the best knowledge of what went on in the thesis.
Thank you. There's also questions based on the publication, but Alexis did speak on this. So the questions are answered, and I'm just going through the chats to see those questions that have not been answered. And there's one who asked if the student is allowed to bring the notes to the presentation. It says, Prof, do I bring my notes for the Viva session?
Well, it all depends on what the notes are. If the notes are to just remind the student of what they need to present on, then I would say it's acceptable. But if it's notes that are going to aid the student on knowledge that he or she did not have, and he or she wants to make it look like they have that knowledge, then we need to guard against that. Because really, this is an examination. So the student is expected to know his or her stuff. Okay?
Okay. There's also a question from Kavani that says, hi, Prof. Thank you for a very informative presentation rather. I would like to know about the Turnitin percentage. Do we submit each chapter or the entire thesis? And what is the threshold? Yeah, thank you, from Kavani.
Okay. It's actually the whole thesis. And I usually don't allow more than 20% similarity.
Okay, Kwenyani did now post the question in the chat, and it says, good morning, Prof. Thank you for the presentation. I have one question and one request. What happens if one did not publish any article and is about to enter VIVA? And I'm also requesting for the presentation made in August. Okay.
Okay, the VIVA can still take place because it is supposed to be scheduled within 2 weeks of the examiner's reports being in, but the candidate must understand that he or she will not graduate until they show evidence of at least one published article or one that's been accepted for publication. Basically, the results will not be approved by the Faculty Higher Degrees Committee or the Senate Higher Degrees Committee until that publication is in the bag. Okay, I see Collins has his hand up.
Prof, I just wanted to ask with regards to the supervisory postgraduate course. I know in the past RCD was facilitating it, and they did allow you do a model by model. So whereby you can finish this model, then you continue with a new model and all that. But now if it's moving to education from next year, is it going to be that it has to be a full course whereby you do 4 models in the first semester and maybe 4 in the second semester? You cannot do it model by model because of the
I
cost
think,
implication.
I think you'll have to speak to the faculty of officers in the Faculty of Education. They'll be able to advise you on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because I stand to be corrected, but maybe someone from RCD can come in here. It's now completely been taken over by Faculty of Education. Am I right?
Yes, I'm not sure if Dr. Lorenzo is also in the session. Maybe he can also speak on that a bit. Dr. Lorenzo, are you available to speak on this?
Yes, okay. So I think I was in his office. Maybe it's just stepped out. But yes, it's true that the Faculty of Education is the one that will be sort of taking over all the administration and everything that is related to the PG DEP and research supervision. According to the knowledge that I have, they are sort of merging it with one of the programs that they are already doing there. So I don't think it will be standing as a stand-on qualification as it stands now. But I think more details can be obtained from the faculty officer, from the Faculty of Education, like Prof. Kriveshni have said.
Hi, Dr. Gabriel.
Yes,
Apologies, I
Doc.
was just on another call. Yeah, so just to add to what you've said, Dr. Gabriel, that's true in regards to the postgraduate diploma in research supervision. That qualification as a whole is being phased out, with the 2024 cohort being the last to graduate. Like Dr. Gabriel has said, there will be certain aspects of this which will be incorporated into the PG dip in higher education, but once again, we'll have to wait for final confirmation from the respective units and faculties, and then we will send out a communication shortly. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lorenzo and Dr. Gabriel, for explaining that. And there are also thank you messages on the chat, Prof. Pillay, for such a meaningful presentation. And let me just go to the chat again. There is a question that was recently posted from Nico, and it says, "Hi, Prof. What happens in a situation when I have 3 published articles and they were submitted before the thesis is submitted? In this case, the articles went through Turnitin with the Q1 and Q2 journals, and now the final thesis shows similarity of 20%.
To me, that should be acceptable because the similarity is mostly due to self-plagiarism and it's within that 20% guideline. So I think it should be fine. I'm not sure about the supervisor and how the supervisor would perceive that, or the specific faculty.
And we also have a comment from not sure, Dr. Gabriel, did you want to say something? Okay, I saw your mic was muted or was unmuted.
I just want to ask a question to Prof. With in relation to self-plagiarism. There's a time when I was trying to explore more about this, form of plagiarism and how one can circumvent or navigate around it. Especially when you are writing, in a thesis or some other kind of research of that nature. I okay, I feel like the first time you present information, that for me that is the possibly the best that you can do, right? the moment you try to go and tone down and try to change the meaning of, in a way, I see it undermining sort of the original or the initial way in which one would have presented his or her research. So I also saw that, one way of going about the issue of self-plagiarism is for you to acknowledge that what you are presenting has already been published, right? Then you also indicate the extent in which you are sort of drawing from that publication, or you if you have not already been awarded for that or been credited for that, then it should not be considered as yourself plagiarizing yourself. But if it's something that you have already been credited for, let's say maybe it's a publication that has been done already, you are doing masters and you have been credited with your, you have been awarded your masters, then you go to PhD, you draw again from that particular publication, or you draw from your master's dissertation, then you don't acknowledge it, you present it as if it is now new. So what is it? What is your take on that, Prof, in terms of one, acknowledging to say that I have published this, but I'm borrowing from this. This is the extent of the borrowing that I'm doing, or what I'm drawing from this article, from this publication.
I don't think there's anything wrong with you actually citing your own work there, Gabriel. That might be one way to work around it. But in any case, we have made our faculty aware of these bottlenecks, where it's your own work at the end of the day. I mean, it's just self-plagiarism. So I noticed recently our faculty is not being so strict on it because the supervisor submits a Turnitin. Okay, sorry, I can hear my voice echoing. I think someone's mic is on. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So basically what our faculty now does is we submit the Turnitin report, but the supervisor writes a motivation stating, why it is this percentage, what is, how much of it is self-plagiarism. And with that, there are no big issues. Yeah. Okay, so I think it's more about the supervisor being more proactive and submitting a report with the Turnitin report as well, because everything the student submits has to go via the supervisor as well.
Okay. I also saw, Prof, at one time I submitted a paper to Sir James that I drew out of my PhD thesis. And when they ran their own similarity check, they found out that it's linked to my thesis. But they gave me a form that I filled, indicating that the work is coming from the thesis. A part of it is coming from the thesis, and they published the paper without any sort of any issues relating to that.
Yeah, no, some journals do have that process in place as well.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Prof.
Okay. All right, I'm not sure if there's any other questions. I think we've got one more minute left.
Yes, so a comment from Prof. Penny Gavenda, and that says, Prof. Pillay, I think not all faculties have that one publication rule, must tend to be corrected though.
Okay, I'm not sure at this stage, but I know most faculties have adopted that approach. Okay. And in some faculties, even conference publications are acceptable.
Okay, so there's one last question on the chat, and it says, Prof, if my article was published in 2020, can it still be considered in 2026?
Well, in what sense is it to be considered? If it was published in 2020, are you now submitting your thesis in 2026? Is that what's been asked?
Yes, yes, that's the question. Yes.
Okay, all right. Yes, it is a publication arising for your PhD, so it should count.
Thank you.
Okay. I see we have run out of time for the session. Just to ask one last question, Prof. Pillay. So is there some sort of a rubric or an assessment tool that is given to the assessors to score the student, or it's just deliberations amongst the assessors?
No, a rubric is sent to the assessors. Basically, what our faculty does is they get the student's thesis and all these supporting documents, the affidavit, the declaration of submission, everything else. And together with that, they send the examiners a rubric, and they also request that the examiner writes a narrative report.
Okay, thank you for that. There are no more hands that are up and no questions on the chat. So we will share the presentation slides, as Prof. Pillay has mentioned that she will share the presentation with us, and we will definitely do share. So I see also some comments where the participants are asking, or they're saying maybe we don't have the presentations available. Just to notify everyone that we have different facilitators. And so at the end of the presentation, we request facilitators to send us their presentation so that we can share with you. So in a case where maybe a presentation slide is not shared, could be because the presenter did not share the presentation, but we do have, what we have control of are the recordings. So those we make sure that we share them, because we have them we record them on our site. So we have access to the recordings, but sometimes we don't have the presentation slides because the facilitators did not share. Just wanted to notify the participants so that when you don't see the presentation, you know that it might be because the facilitator did not share. We have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much, Prof. Pillay. This was such an insightful presentation. You have outlined this process very well, and we fully understand what is required of the students, and the supervisors also have a great idea of what is required from them. So in that regard, we truly thank you for taking the time to present this session today. And to all those who have joined us, thank you for being here. Thank you for the engagement. I think there were a lot of engagement on the chats, and people raising their hands to speak. So we had a meaningful discussion on this topic. Thank you very much. And just to remind you, there is a feedback survey on the chat. Let me just post it again. Take some time before you leave the session, please, to complete the session. And as I've mentioned, you can make use of this opportunity to just suggest some of the topics that you would want us to cover, and from your suggestions, we can organize those workshops, and we can now end the session and have a good day further.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you and
Thank you much,
goodbye.
colleagues. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you very
Bye.
much. Bye. Thank you so much.